Hi, this is Skip Elsheimer, and welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show. I got a haircut, so it's going to be weird because you're going to see some episodes where I have a haircut and some episodes where I don't have a haircut. They're going to be in sequential order, but it's not going to make any sense. And that's because these shows are pre-recorded because I'm taking a break from doing live shows, but I still wanted to share films with you from my collection. So today we're going to watch films about Russia and the Soviet Union. And the first film is Russian Life Today. It was made by Bailey Films in the mid-'60s. Although the footage looks a little bit earlier. And it's trying to offer a view, just a simple view of what Russian citizens do. Because we were... during the Cold War, we had this idea that they all hated America and, were godless communists. But the truth is, most of them were just trying to get by, raise families, enjoy life, etc. And so this film is very similar in tone to the films of Julian Bryan, who was with the International Film Foundation, who shot many films in the Soviet Union back during the Cold War and a little bit before, and was releasing them to the United States. And some people thought that he was actually a Russian communist sympathizer. But no, he was just trying to say, look, these people, look how common they are to us. Look so much we share. So anyways, here's Russian Life Today. Enjoy.
The views of the Soviet Union you are about to see were made with government permission. An official guide accompanied the cameraman to ensure that the better, more prosperous side of the Soviet Union be filmed. These scenes portray physical environment and something about the lives of the people. They do not dwell on Soviet political life, nor on the nature of the economy. In many ways, Soviet life is similar to life in the United States. But government control is much broader, thus lessening individual freedom of choice. Watch for examples of this as you view the film. Halfway around the Earth from North America lies a country which, in land area, is the largest in the world. This is the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, better known as the Soviet Union or Russia. Well over twice the size of the United States, it occupies more than 1/6 of the Earth's land area. Occupying the northern part of Asia and a large segment of Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union embraces a wide variety of peoples, including Mongols, Finns, Persians, and many others. Although, in fact, a centralized state, the Soviet Union is formally divided into 15 republics and other smaller political divisions. Moscow, the 5th largest city in the world, is the capital both of the Soviet Union and also of the largest republic, the Russian Republic. Adjacent to the Moskva River in Moscow is the Kremlin, the most important landmark in the Soviet Union. It was originally built as a fortress. Until Peter the Great moved the imperial government to St. Petersburg, the Kremlin was the home of the Tsars, with their palaces and churches. Today, it houses the Communist Party and government headquarters. The Kremlin faces Red Square, a large paved area with the ornate Cathedral of St. Basil's at one end. Frequent demonstrations are staged in Red Square, held for the benefit of all Soviet citizens and for all the world. The entire world views with concern the activities here, for they are symbolic of the all-powerful communist government which directs this big, strong, and potentially wealthy nation. Only about 8% of the adult Soviet population belongs to the Communist Party, the only political party permitted to exist. Each day, long lines of people await their turn to enter one building on Red Square containing the embalmed body of Vladimir Lenin, revolutionary leader and founding father of the Soviet regime. Like most churches in Russia, St. Basil's is now a museum. Since its inception, the communist government has actively discouraged religious practices by closing churches and conducting propaganda campaigns against religion. Only a limited number of churches are permitted to remain open. The downtown streets of Moscow, like those of other large Soviet cities, are crowded with throngs of pedestrians. There are relatively few privately owned cars. Walking is a favorite pastime and a means of avoiding crowded apartments. The average Soviet citizen also uses the public transportation system, which is extensively developed in the cities. In large metropolitan areas like Moscow, Leningrad, and Kiev, modern and rapid subway systems are a major part of the public transportation network. This subway tunnel in Leningrad is 500 feet underground. Throughout the Soviet Union, women engineers and conductors are widely employed by the government-owned railroads. From an early age, Russian children are taught to think of themselves as being part of a group. After the age of 6 months, many city youngsters spend at least part of their weekdays in state-operated nursery schools. State care is necessary because in many families, both parents work during the day. When children are 7, they go to regular schools. As in most European countries, academic standards are high. Classes meet 6 days a week. School children soon become members of the communist youth organization, the Young Pioneers. A red scarf is the emblem of membership. When they grow older, many will join the Komsomol, or Young Communist League. Komsomol membership is often, but not always, an avenue for advancement into the select ranks of the Communist Party. Children attending regular school spend every summer at a Young Pioneers camp. Part of the day is devoted to recreation, physical training, and sports. Another part of every day is spent in political indoctrination. Moscow University is the largest and best known in the Soviet Union. Outstanding students from all over the country compete for entrance. Russia has a long and distinguished cultural tradition in literature, music, and the performing arts. The Russian ballet, for example, was world-renowned long before the Russian Revolution. This theater is the home of the famous Bolshoi Ballet. Ballet school is supported by the Ministry of Culture for children as well as for young adults. Because of isolation from the West and Soviet political controls, the visual arts have not fared so well. There are, however, several excellent museum collections of paintings by European masters of previous centuries. Soviet citizens are avid readers for pleasure and education. Bookstands are numerous. All newspapers, books, and magazines in the country must be approved by the government. Food and soft drinks are sold on the street during the summer. Even small businesses like this one are government-owned. Individuals are not allowed to go into business for themselves. A government-owned and operated department store, called GUM for short, is located on Red Square. Consisting of a number of small shops, it's the largest department store in the Soviet Union. Clothing and household furnishings are offered in varying quantities, but their selection and quality, though improving, does not yet compare favorably with that in Western Europe or the United States. In the major cities, large hotels are provided for travelers and delegations, many from other countries. The bulk of the urban population lives in government-owned apartment buildings rather than houses because they are cheaper to build. Despite widespread construction of apartment buildings, there is a severe housing shortage in the cities. Soviet families live in apartments which are assigned to them. They usually have one or two small rooms. Sometimes two families are crowded into a single apartment. This apartment of a well-to-do family is quite a contrast to the average home. The mother is a supervisor in a local factory. The father is a captain in the Russian Navy, a position of considerable prestige. Both belong to the Communist Party. Russians enjoy parties and often invite friends to dinner. Not all Soviet homes are as comfortable as this one. Regardless of income, medical services are available to all and are directed and supported by the government. Women doctors are quite common. All are paid by the state. Winter climate in Moscow and in most of the Soviet Union is severe. The bulk of the country lies in the same latitudes as Canada. Winters are long and cold, summers short but relatively warm. Beyond the Caucasus Mountains, in the far south of the Soviet Union, lies a large area which has a very temperate climate. The Republic of Georgia is located in this area between the Black and the Caspian Seas. It is bordered on the south by Turkey. The capital of Georgia is the ancient city of Tbilisi. The warm Mediterranean climate of Tbilisi and its rolling land is quite different from Moscow's flat terrain and cold winters. Its climate resembles that of Southern California. Georgia's modern Capitol building is located here. It contrasts sharply with the daily life of the Georgian people, many of whom live much as their ancestors did hundreds of years ago. The craftsmen still turn out handmade items, including shoes. But today, they are controlled by the government. In Georgia, as throughout Russia, there are two kinds of markets for foodstuffs: the state-operated market, where prices are set by law, and the collective farm or free market seen here. At the free market, peasants are permitted to sell products raised on their small private plots for whatever price they can get. Since the selection of goods is larger, and they are usually of better quality, the prices are normally higher. Second in population among the Soviet republics is the Republic of Ukraine. The capital is Kiev, a city much older than Moscow, located along the Dnieper River. Kiev is an important inland port. From here, ships can reach the Black Sea, through the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles to the Mediterranean, and then to the Atlantic and the world's ports. Half of the Soviet Union's steel is produced in the Ukraine, so the port of Kiev is conveniently located for exporting this heavy metal to distant Russian ports and to other markets. The factory workers in Kiev, as throughout the Soviet Union, are members of a trade union. However, Russian union members do not have the right to bargain with their government employers or to go on strike. The Ukraine is also known as the breadbasket of Russia, for it is the chief wheat-producing area in the Soviet Union. Bread, the single most important item on the Soviet menu, is baked in state-owned bakeries located throughout the country. Bread is always sold at state-controlled stores, where it is available in a variety of forms. Producing sufficient food and fiber is a serious problem in the Soviet Union. Agricultural production has not kept pace with industrial development. In the 1930s, private farming was abolished, often ruthlessly, and the lands were organized into collective farms. Today, there are both state and collective farms. While there are important differences between them, both are closely supervised by the party and governmental administrations. Farm mechanization has been slow. Much of the hauling and plowing is still done by manual labor, often by women. Besides working on the collective and state farmlands, every peasant family is permitted to cultivate a small private plot, the production of which it can eat or sell at the free markets. Although comprising only a small percentage of the total cultivated land, these private plots produce a surprisingly large percentage of total agricultural output. During the school year, farm children go directly from school to an agricultural center where they learn farming methods. As in the city, they attend school 6 days a week. We have seen life in several parts of the Soviet Union. In many ways, it is similar to life in the United States. However, in the Soviet Union, the government directly dominates the life of the country. It is largely beyond the democratic control of the people. The government owns and directs economic enterprises, housing, and transportation. Private or parochial schools do not exist. The Kremlin in Moscow is the nerve center of the country. This is the headquarters of the Communist Party elite, who direct all activities in the Soviet Union today.
So that, that was, it was pretty nice. And I love watching films about Russia from the 60s and 70s because of, that skewed view that we got based on what was happening with the Soviet premier and, the communists and the acts of aggression that they were doing and all that stuff. It's just seeing that there's people just like us. This next film is a propaganda film about propaganda. And this was, it's called Yankee Go Home. And it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of boring shots of dudes just sitting around on a couch talking about Soviet propaganda. But it's when they actually show the footage it's phenomenal. And I have no doubt that the Soviets were actively doing propaganda, just like the United States was. So it's kind of interesting to watch this and see all the examples. And, to say that American soldiers were corrupt and greedy drunkards who were all controlled by Wall Street, that's a pretty harsh view. But, if you kind of pull back a little bit and you think about, especially things during the Cold War and some moments of aggression, were they motivated by democracy or were they motivated by other factors? Those are the questions that I ask. And as you know, if you've been watching AV Geeks, I tend to be very leftist in my views of things, or whatever you want to call it. But anyways, this is an interesting historical document nonetheless. And I love meta films about meta films. So a propaganda film about propaganda is really great. So this is Yankee Go Home. Enjoy.
Gentlemen, as you know, Mr. Allen has been in the thick of the Cold War since its very beginning. You're familiar with his very distinguished record as a career diplomat and troubleshooter. But just for the record, let me recall a few of its high spots. 4 times in critical periods, he was assigned to frontline ambassadorial posts in Iran, Yugoslavia, India, and Greece. He has been Assistant Secretary of State for the Near East, South Asia, and Africa. In 1948, when Congress decided we ought to have an overseas information program on a more or less permanent basis, Mr. Allen was put in charge. And last fall, the President decided that this important activity needed Mr. Allen again. He brought him home from overseas and made him Director of the United States Information Agency. Mr. Allen attends the meetings of the Cabinet and the National Security Council. Mr. Allen, why is it that everything the other side says is propaganda, while we call what we say information?
Lindley, the word propaganda has taken on a very bad connotation. It was originally a perfectly good word, but it brings to people's minds now the idea of twisting or distorting the truth, or even manufacturing complete falsehoods. Whereas we try in our service, our output, to give as straight a factual presentation as we can. We feel that that is information and it should be labeled that, not called propaganda.
I wonder if you could give us an example of Soviet propaganda, particularly as applied to the armed services, which these gentlemen represent.
Well, I had today with me a book that the Soviet government puts out for its training course of the armed services of the Soviet Union. The book is called Marxist-Leninism on War and the Army. I'll just read you one description of the way it talks about American Army officers. It said U.S. armed service officers are corrupt, weak, run by Wall Street, and, quote, professional robbers, end quote. Well, I call that propaganda.
Well, Mr. Allen, that applies to all officers of the armed forces. Do you have a comparable piece of Soviet propaganda that applies specifically to the Army?
Well, I'd like to show you on that a film of the meeting of the American and the Soviet armed forces at the Elbe, the River Elbe, at the end of the last war. And you'll see how the Soviet government and their information service presents this meeting of the two armies. Could we have the film?
Let's see what really happened at the Elbe before we view scenes from the Soviet film. We are outside of Torgau, Germany, on the 26th of April, 1945, at the first official meeting of the American and Russian armies. The film you are seeing was made by Signal Corps photographers of the United States Army. You will see a glimpse of the Elbe River Bridge in the background. The meeting took place to arrange a meeting of Corps commanders on the following day. Prior to this time, only patrols of the two armies had contacted each other. Here are Major General Emil F. Reinhardt, Commanding General of the 69th Division, 5th Corps, United States Army, and Major General Rusakov, commanding the 58th Guard Division, Red Army. General Reinhardt said, and I quote, "I crossed the river and waited for a short time as the Russians thought the meeting was later than 1600 hours. Rusakov and I discussed the details for meeting of the two Corps commanders the next day. I was impressed most with the cordial attitude of the Russians." Unquote. Now... Now for the Soviet proof that our Army officers are corrupt, as we see our play-acting general dally on the doorstep.
Mr. Allen, what do the communists have to say concerning our Air Force?
I'd like for you to listen to a broadcast from Moscow on that subject, which talks about the psycho-neurotic American pilots. Could we have that soundtrack?
You are tuned to Radio Moscow, broadcasting in the 16, 19, and 25-meter bands in the shortwave, and in the medium on 216.6 meters. An Associated Press dispatch tells us that an American Saberjet accidentally dropped some rockets over Florida. The population has been alerted and warned of the serious danger. This brought to mind a secret report of Dr. Frank Berry, medical assistant to the Secretary of Defense, which made me doubt that the rocket fall was the result of an accident. This report gives us every ground for questioning the possibility of accidents in general, since it claims that approximately 70% of the officers and enlisted men of the Air Force are psychoneurotic. What is more, checks have shown that the state of affairs is especially critical among the airmen doing steady nuclear patrols.
What are they saying about the United States Navy?
And the Marine Corps? I've got a copy here of the Soviet newspaper that's published for their Navy called the Sovietsky Float, the Soviet fleet, May 18th of this year. Speaks about what's going on in the Mediterranean. Says, referring to the United States, over Lebanon hangs the real threat of military intervention by the imperialist states led by the United States. He says, the American command has doubled the landing forces attached to the Sixth Fleet. That's the Marine complement with the ships. The imperialists are openly brandishing weapons, threatening Lebanon. But no matter how much the colonizers try, they cannot intimidate the people of the Near and Middle East, and in particular the Lebanese people, who have set on the road of defending the freedom and independence of their country. That's typical of the type of statements that the Soviets are making about the United States Navy and the Marine Corps, tools of imperialists, colonizers, Wall Street, so forth.
Mr. Allen, don't the Soviets in their propaganda attempt to show also that Americans are opposed to all the colored races?
Yes, I do. I've seen that particularly when I was serving in the Far East and in India. They try to make it appear that the Americans are the most race-conscious people in the world. Actually, the experience of people in that part of the world dealing with Americans is the best way to counteract that. When our naval ships or our armed services units are stationed in those parts of the world, the integration that takes place in our armed services is the most useful way to combat that type of Soviet propaganda. Also, last fall we had a magnificent experience when Marian Anderson went out through the Far East and India making her appearances as an American and speaking to the people about the racial questions in the United States as an American Negro was an excellent counterweight to that Soviet propaganda.
I believe that Soviet film, Meeting on the Elbe, has a sequence charging us with racial discrimination and, in fact, fierce racial hatred. It might be interesting to take a look at that.
This sign in German and Korean says, "This is your home away from home." This scene from the Soviet film, The Partisan, depicts another army activity for the Oriental theater goer. It is the fate of this Korean girl to be taken up the hill for a dawn execution. Here is a literal translation of their conversation. The officer says, "If you surrender even now, your life can be saved." And the girl says, "The daughter of the partisan, even though captured by the Americans, is certain that you will pay. It pains me not to live to see you pay."
Mr. Allen, the communist propaganda system, its organization, it appears to me that this must involve quite an elaborate chain of command, if I may use that term.
I'll draw your attention to this chart here. The Soviet government has gone all out for propaganda. That is, very recently we've seen how they've written several letters, Khrushchev or Bulganin, to President Eisenhower. The letters are addressed on the envelope to the President of the United States, but what they are really intended to are all the world, just for propaganda purposes, not as a serious document from one government to another. Now, the Soviet government is headed by the Party Presidium. That's just a small group of people in Moscow who run the 200 million people of the Soviet Union in their hands. There are two elements, the government and the party machine. Those are quite separate. The government is merely a bureaucracy. The party machine really has the power. They use all the means of communications and contact with foreign people to spread their propaganda. Just take, for example, radio. The Soviet government, every week, in some 50 foreign languages, sends out 2,300 hours of broadcast beamed towards foreign countries in foreign languages. You say, how can you do 2,300 hours in 1 week? It means in each language they do so many hours, and if you multiply that, the number of hours by the number of languages, 2,300 a week in broadcasts. They have mass books and publications which they send abroad in various foreign languages. Interestingly enough, many of those books and publications that they use in the Near East and the Far East and South Asia, India and those countries, are in English, because that's the best language to reach the intelligent public in those countries. They use films. They use exchanges, that is, exchange of visits. They bring large numbers of Indians or Egyptians or Chinese or Greeks, anybody else they can get to the Soviet Union, give them tours around the Soviet Union, send them to universities in the Soviet Union. Great party congresses of the communist parties in all the countries. They call together and have big meetings in Moscow. Going back just for a minute for exchanges, the Soviet Union put on one stunt last summer in which they spent more money than the entire United States government does on all of its information and cultural relations work for a whole year. For 1 month in Moscow, the Soviet Union had 50,000 students from all over the world brought to the Soviet Union for the great youth festival that we hear about.
The 50,000 delegates to the youth festival are gathered in the Moscow Stadium to hear about the Soviet version of peace. The delegations parade around the huge stadium, waving gaily to the capacity crowd. The national flags of participating delegations passing in review. Followed by groups displaying their national dances. The word mir is Russian for peace. And there's Khrushchev.
Here's the delegation reported to be from the United States.
In keeping with the festival's theme, the Russian hosts release hundreds of white doves, the age-old symbol of peace. And the daytime entertainment climaxes with a spectacular display of precision formations Delegates also sightsee in the Kremlin during some of the daylight hours. And this is the kissing ceremony, as the boy selects a girl by throwing a scarf around her, sort of a Soviet version of drop the handkerchief. Some are entertained at the Bolshoi Ballet.
Outside, in the streets and parks of the city, there is entertainment of all kinds.
Hold everything. It's undulating Eulalie, the curvaceous cutie from Chardzu, which is near Samarkand, if anyone cares. But it's back to the stadium for the grand propaganda finale. Here is the symbol of destruction. The tail of the bomb looks like an American eagle. Both must be eliminated. The bomb and the eagle. The cards say peace in Russian, peace in English, and peace in French.
Mr. Allen, what percentage of the people who attend these festivals that you mentioned are communists?
Well, we don't have any exact figures on that, but the best we can calculate, of the 50,000 that went to the Soviet Youth Festival last summer, we estimate that about half of them were non-communists. That is perhaps 25,000. I was in Greece at the time myself, and I know that I think there were about 200 Greek young people went to the Soviet Union for that festival. And many of them were just going for the ride. They wanted to get the trip. It was a chance to go and see the Soviet Union. And as long as the Soviet government will pay all expenses, actually, in that case, the Soviet government took a young man from Greece, took him to the Soviet Union, kept him there for a month in good hotels, accommodations, food, all expenses, traveling around the Soviet Union. Took them to the very finest theatrical performances, the ballet and the symphony orchestra and the opera and so forth, and back to Greece, all for the equivalent of $50. Also, they act through international fronts, that is, youth organizations, college students around the world, or labor organizations that don't admit that they are communist, but are infiltrated and run by the hardcore of communists in those organizations. And through those means, they throw out their propaganda to the non-communist world. As an example of the way they do, in a totalitarian state such as the Soviet Union, they have complete control of all their means of communications. And they can say one thing in the Soviet Union and entirely a different thing outside the Soviet Union, or even to different countries outside the Soviet Union in the language of those countries. As an example, take recently when there was a threat of an attack on Syria. The Syrians claimed that there was a threat of an attack by Turkey. The Soviet Union was saying to the Syrians, you are being threatened by the Turks. They were saying that in broadcast in the Syrian language to the Syrians. To the Turks, though, in the Turkish language, they were saying to the Turkish people, the Americans are in there forcing you and using you as tools to attack the Syrians. You can tell an entirely different story in different countries without any hesitation. I've got a chart here that shows the way the Soviet Union parcels out its radio broadcasting in these many languages in order to get as much of a varied effect as they can. For example, in the lower part of the chart, it shows how much broadcasting the Soviet Union does overseas to foreign countries. That's 900 hours a week. This, incidentally, is the Voice of America broadcast is 730 hours a week altogether to the world. This is the Soviet broadcast just to foreign countries, not in the Russian language, but in foreign languages. These are the broadcasts by the European satellite states, that is, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, and so forth. They do about the same amount altogether as the Soviet Union does. These 317 hours are done by Communist China. Then 125 hours each week are done by the Far East orbit. That means to say North Korea and North Vietnam. And then there's 108 hours now being done by various clandestine radio stations, broadcasters, who are situated in one place or another claiming that they are, for example, the South Korean broadcast. They're actually broadcasting from North Korea, but announcing that they are a South Korean broadcast. That's why the clandestine comes in. So you see that the Soviet Union uses all the satellite countries to do broadcasting outside the communist orbit, as well as the Soviet broadcasts themselves.
Mr. Allen, I wonder if you could amplify what you said about the Soviet distribution of magazines and books abroad. I've seen some very startling figures on that. Do you happen to have them in mind?
Well, I have some figures about the publication of the magazines. They are putting out 85 periodicals in 30 different languages. That periodicals means magazines and quarterly reviews and things of that sort. As far as books are concerned, last year they poured 100 million books into the free world.
They usually sell at very low prices.
Yes,
don't they?
usually, or they give them away.
Alan, I wonder if you would discuss for us the main propaganda themes of the communists today.
I have a chart here, which I'll show you on that. These are just taken 5 sample propaganda themes of the Soviet Union. One of them is that it's the United States that puts up the Iron Curtains, while the Soviet Union seeks closer relations with everybody, that we are the people who have the real Iron Curtain, and they just want to embrace the world. Secondly, they're constantly saying that the United States is a warmongering country, that we want to bring about a world war, whereas the Soviet Union seeks peace and disarmament. They say that United States capitalism can no longer compete with progress under Soviet socialism, that they're going ahead of us in production. They also say that the communist countries will surpass the United States and its allies in growth and strength, and also that the United States is fighting a losing battle to maintain its colonialist hold on the new countries of Asia and Africa. That we are the imperialists and we are trying to dominate those countries, but their national spirit will survive.
Mr. Allen, these are all examples of communist propaganda successes. Aren't there some things which they can't cover up even with their highly touted propaganda?
Yes, lots of them. For example, just very recently we've seen the very bad effect on the Soviet public relations posture in all countries, particularly in Europe and the United States, by the execution of the former Prime Minister of Hungary, Nagy. There have been tremendous demonstrations now in Paris and London and Bonn and other places by socialist and left-wing fellow traveler people who are terribly annoyed against the Soviet Union because of the execution of Nagy, and there's nothing that their propaganda line can do about it. They've just lost a great deal of support.
Stalin, aren't the communists using film a lot in this propaganda field?
Yes, they are. Both documentary type of films and entertainment films. And in the entertainment film field, they have recently been very active. As a matter of fact, very recently, they won an international award at Cannes in France. The film was called The 41st.
Oh, yes, I've heard about that film. I believe it's about the girl who's a Red Army sniper and the boy who's a White Russian officer. They're shipwrecked and fall in love. But they have a quarrel over communism, and that proves fatal. Let's see what happens in this communist love story.
Safe from the shipwreck, out of the sea, across the ice, comes the girl, a Red Army sniper, and her prisoner, a white Russian officer. She has killed 40 men with her rifle.
Got lots of fat.
Yes, but will it burn?
On the Volga, we often use it. Burns better than wood. Why couldn't the others have got through as well?
Might be better to
The
get
cross
out of
worn by
these
the
wet
man
clothes.
is another communist identification
whistling
of
at
the
you.
enemy.
All right, go ahead then. Forget I'm here.
You first. I'll wait outside till you're ready.
Don't be an idiot. The wind's still raging. You're liable to catch your death out there.
I was only trying to save you embarrassment.
You and your high and mighty ways make me sick. This is the front line, not a drawing room. Go on, what are you waiting for? Anybody'd think you were shy.
The communist girl, eager to fight, now finds her prisoner sick and discouraged.
The never-ending tide of hatred and death. It's all just a gory nightmare.
No one likes it, but it's the price of progress.
Yes, and you can have it. As far as I'm concerned, all I want is peace. And my books.
In other words, you don't care if our enemies scheme to destroy us. So long as you can read your books, others can go hang.
I say let them. Huh. Damn it! Why should I take the world on my shoulders? Besides, what has the world done for me? Search for
As
the
a
truth
man
and
who
where it
opposes
starts.
communism,
He claims his right.
our
Who's
hero
the judge?
becomes confused.
There are so many truths. The German, the Russian, the Mujik, the ruling classes, the Bolshevik. I say, to hell with a lot. I don't care what happens. Leave me alone. I'm out of it all, and I won't soil my hands again.
What you're saying is others should poke in the mud for your honor.
That's their own affair. I don't care. I'm no longer interested.
I see.
Mariutka, don't be angry. Wait. I don't mean to hurt you. Don't you understand? I'm sick at heart, exhausted. Let's get away from here. Go to the Caucasus. I've got a summer house in Sukhumi. If only you'll go with me. I'll help you to study. I'll be good to you, I promise you.
You're asking me to turn my back on my conscience, cast aside my obligations, loll around on cushions, munching candy bought with the blood of my comrades.
Don't be so melodramatic.
Oh, yes, I forgot your class likes to hide ugliness by pretending it doesn't exist.
Is that all? I wonder how you can blow yourself up with so much hot air and forget that you're a woman.
It's been thrust on me by people like you. How dare you think I could so far forget myself as to desert my cause and lie around your house in idleness like any slut, you blasted son of an aristocrat?
That's about all I can stand. Stick to your damn doctrine. Scum that you are. It's lucky for you that there's such a thing as chivalry towards your sex. I hate you!
Why did I have to fall in love with you? You've tortured me, destroyed my peace of mind, but I can't fight you, I can't.
Don't cry, my darling. Don't turn your back on me.
I thought you would understand. You were cleverer than I was.
Sorry I failed you, my darling. Don't cry. It'll work out all right, I promise. Trust me again. Present, let's forget. Bye. I love you so much. You love me too?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sick of waiting to be rescued.
Her love
If the
blooms when
fishermen
he
don't
embraces.
turn up in the next 3 days, I'll commit suicide.
Hey, where's all that courage I credited you with, huh?
Shows what a demoralizing effect you have on me. I should have had more sense. Yes. You and your wishful thinking. I can only hope I brought you down to earth a bit. Have I?
Oh, you have.
So you admit you were wrong?
Yes, it's all clear as day to me now. Thanks to you, I've stopped fumbling at last. I was wrong to think I could go back to my books. There's work to be done. There's a life to be lived. And damn me, I live it. I warn you, I'm no longer meek and mild. Now I'm a man with a purpose.
Oh. You might at least tell me what that is.
All right. As I see it, my country needs me now more than ever. Idealism must give way to realism. For it's plain that if her destiny is to be left in your hands, I dread to think what a mess you'd make of it. By all that's holy, a sail! A sail!
The fisherman! Ah! Save me, Wait, you idiot! We've got to give them a signal.
What for? They're coming here anyway.
They could be going further east. Get the gun and fire a shot quick. Hurry!
Got it! Hands up!
Don't be any firing. Maybe give them three.
Who is it? Who are they?
I'm not sure they're fishermen at all. You'd better fire another shot.
They're not! They're gone! Hey there! Hooray! Yeah! Come on! Yeah! Hey!
Stop! Stop! You're my prisoner! You shan't escape again! Stop!
Mariotka.
41st victim of her rifle. And the title of the picture.
Mr. Allen, how can we compete with this communist propaganda in view of the fact that the communists can resort to any deceit, whereas we have to stick to the truth?
I think, first and foremost, that we should do more of what we've just been doing this afternoon. That is, we should recognize Soviet propaganda when we see it or hear it. Sometimes it's very subtle, and sometimes it's in a disguised form. But most Americans don't realize how much of it is being put out or what it is when they see it. Now, secondly, we must do more ourselves. That is, more counter-propaganda and more presenting the story of the United States and the American way of life and the democratic principles that we stand for. We are doing a great deal. This afternoon, we've only considered what the Soviets are doing in this field, but I haven't talked about what we are doing, and don't think we've been holding our hands and doing nothing. We haven't done as much as we should because we Americans are not inclined very much in the propaganda field, but we've realized that it now has to be done, and we are doing more of it. But thirdly, and perhaps more important, we should do everything we can to deprive the communists of fertile ground in which to plant their propaganda. Now that means, as far as government is concerned, that government should follow policies which make the United States admired and respected and liked as much as we can. Know that there are many cases in which we can't please everybody, quite true, but our policies should have a public relations aspect to them and should win friends. But more than that, each of us individual Americans should behave, act when we are dealing with foreigners in a way that makes foreigners like us as individual Americans and respect us. And then these signs like Yankee go home, we'll have them. They'll continue. But they won't have fertile ground, they won't catch on if all of us Americans, civilian and military, behave in the way that we should.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen, for this very interesting discussion.
So that was phenomenal. There's some scenes in there that are so great. And I've been actively, whenever I can, I go to used bookstores and I find communist propaganda. There's some amazing, I have a book of Vietnam propaganda. It was made by the Chinese. And, certainly I don't agree, but there's such strong images. And I also have a book called The Commissar Disappears, which is all about the Kremlin editing photos whenever a communist leader fell in disfavor, which happened pretty often. So you have a photo of like a group of men in a room, and then this one was no good. Boop, gone. This one's no good. And then you're left with a photo with just like two guys or just one guy. And, this is all before Photoshop. So I think it's called The Commissar Vanishes. I think is what it's called. It's a really good book. It's it's mostly illustrations and descriptions of what happened and why and all that. So it's fascinating. Anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in today. If you like what you saw, you can certainly contribute by, cameras are all different. Go into buymeacoffee.com/avgeeks because avgeeks run on coffee, and even when I'm not doing a live show, I still enjoy drinking coffee. So that's one way you can reward us. You can also just go to the avgeeks.com and see other things that we have that we've put online. We have DVDs for sale. You can also hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can comment and share. Those are ways to tell the world, hey, I kind of dig what AV Geeks are doing with showing all these 16 millimeter films. So all those things would be great. I will be back again on the next weekday, which could be tomorrow or it could be Monday. I'm not sure when this, I didn't time out or date out when each thing was going to air. Some of it's a little bit random. But thanks again for tuning in. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I hope to see you soon. Everybody take care.